Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Track 3. We will be starting off in 5 minutes' time. Thank you.
As PTE Academic teachers, your number one objective is to help students achieve their goals. You want to make sure they're as prepared as they can be and that they feel empowered to get the results they work so hard for. And just as you want to see them succeed, we want to see you succeed. To help you do that, we've created an online course to give you the knowledge, tools and confidence you need to prepare your students for their tests. This course will give you an in-depth understanding of the PTE Academic test, teaching techniques for language acquisition and practice, skills-based activities for the classroom, scoring tasks with speaking and writing items, checkpoints to evaluate your learning, and a certificate of completion at the end of each module. It's flexible and can be tailored to your needs. Choose to take all 6 modules or select specific areas you want to know more about. Learn anytime, anywhere, at a pace that suits you. Whether you're looking to reinvigorate your teaching methods or simply need some additional support, we're here to help you be the best teacher you can be. Start your learning journey with us today.
Hello, and a very good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Zubaida, and I'll be the moderator for today. Thank you for joining us today in the 29th Malta International Conference. It is a blessing to be part of this conference that is able to gather all of us across borders on different time zones at one online stage. Thank you, Malta and Pearson, for giving us this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, computer-based testing is here to stay. With COVID-19 still affecting the world, traditional testing is giving way to digital assessments. More and more digital assessments are using AI scoring to mark written and spoken responses traditionally marked by human markers. What does this AI scoring mean? Can computer really mark like human expert markers? How does it mark? Thus, in relevance to this, the title of our featured workshop today is How AI Scoring Works for Speaking and Writing. We are fortunate to have with us this morning Madam Diria Esel. I hope to get her name right. I've been practicing a lot. Sorry if I got it wrong, yeah, Diria? Who will be sharing with us on this topic in relevance to what AI scoring is, based on a Pearson high-stakes test, and how automated scoring is used for speaking and writing, the two very important elements in our teaching. Daria Esel has worked for Pearson since 2015 and is currently the Client Services and Training Specialist with PTR Academic and Pearson's ELT products. With a focus on training, Daria has worked with universities, migration, and education agents, teachers, and aspiring international students and migrants in understanding all aspects of PTR Academic and Pearson English products. Before I call upon the speaker, it's a very beautiful lady here, a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for the speaker later, please kindly post them in the chat box. Well, we shall move straight on to the sharing now, as I'm sure everyone here is eager to hear so much from you, Daria, on the topic today. So without further ado, please welcome Daria Esel. Good morning, Daria.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can see me clearly and hear me clearly.
Yeah, you're looking good. How are you today?
I'm actually doing quite well. It's a little bit chilly in Melbourne, Australia. My fingers are a bit cold, but I kind of wish I was in Malaysia because, you have such beautiful warm weather.
Oh, and here, completely feeling so hot. By the way, it's around 9:30 here. What will be the time there? Is it around 11:30?
Yes, it's 12 o'clock, almost 12 o'clock.
Oh, almost noon, is it?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so, great to have you with us. So the floor is yours now. All the best.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Just give me one moment, everybody. Actually, before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you to Melta for giving us the opportunity to present today. So it is really great that we can all connect despite being so far apart. Although maybe in the future, I would really hope to make it to Malaysia to present in person as well. All right, so let me share my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay, I'm going to make sure I've got my audio and I have that one. Okay, so everyone can see that, and I'm going to click the little hide button there, and I'm going to make sure I can see comments. As Dr. Zubaydah said, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the comments or in the chat, and I'll try and answer them at the end of the session, and I might even ask you a few questions here and there as we go along, so definitely encourage participation. So as mentioned, today's presentation is how AI scoring works for speaking and writing. So let's get started. Okay, let's make sure I've got my screen on the right. Perfect. Okay, I'll get that out of the way. So in today's session, we're going to look at a few different areas. Firstly, what is PT Academic? You might be new to the test, or you may know a little bit about it, but we're just going to do a little bit of a refresh. We'll talk about understanding AI scoring for speaking and writing. And then lastly, we'll talk about evaluating responses in the classroom for a little bit more practical use of scoring. Okay, so the first part, what is PT Academic? Firstly, I thought I would ask everybody if you're familiar with the test. If you are familiar, please feel free to type in a yes in the chat. If you're not familiar, let me know. Or you can give yourself a rating from 1 to 3 about how familiar you are. If you know nothing, you could be a 1. If you know a little bit, maybe you're a 2. And if you're quite familiar, you'll be a 3. So hopefully I might see a few responses come up here and there. But I'm not sure if I can actually see all see the chat. Okay. All right. Okay, well, let's move on. Hopefully, if you do know a little bit about PTE already, this will just be a little bit of a refresher. And if you are new, this will be a little bit of a taster about the test. Okay, so in one simple sentence, PTE Academic is a computer-based language test that provides unbiased and secure proof of a candidate's English skills for university, professional, and migration applications. So if someone is looking to study abroad and they're going to do a degree, they need to provide evidence of their English language skills and meet the university's requirements. So they might take a test like PT Academic. And the same thing goes for professional bodies. If someone is looking to be a nurse, for example, in Australia or in the UK or in New Zealand, they also need to do this. And again, a lot of migration purposes, people might come to different countries to practice their skills. So this is one of the ways that they can do this. The great thing about PT Academic, as highlighted there, it is 100% computer-based from beginning to end. Okay, so we're testing around the world. PT Academic tests are completed in test centres, and there are centres located in over 110 countries worldwide. So we have 370 plus test centres, and what a test taker needs to do is jump on our website, have a look for their location. For example, you'll see Malaysia in front of you, and see what's the closest test centre to them. They can book in for the time that they prefer, maybe a morning or an afternoon session, and then once they're completed, they head home. Oh, just trying to get to the next slide. Okay. So inside a test centre, once you've booked your test or a student has booked their test, they head to the test centre on the selected date, and they'll see something that looks a little bit like this. All of our test centres around the world are pretty uniform. They all look very similar to each other. There is a standard set. From the top picture, you'll see there's a registration area. There's an administrator who takes test takers through the beginning of the process. We have a few security checks, like the top picture, which shows the palm vein. This gets scanned. It's one of our security procedures, as well as checking a valid ID. There are lockers for test takers to put all their belongings because they can't take anything into the test centre with them. We have the bottom two pictures, which is the actual testing room. So there could be a number of candidates in the room at the one time. It could be 2 or 3, it could be 5, it could be 10. So this is a really good point for test takers to know before they go and take the test. So there will be other people in there with them, but they'll have their own little cubicle. And above each cubicle is a CCTV camera. So this monitors them at all times. And there is a test centre administrator who watches them take their test. And it's also there to offer any assistance should they need it. So who are our PT Academic test takers? Well, we do have a diverse range of people. They can be as young as 16, and if they are that young, they'll have to get parental consent, or they could be as old as 60 plus. You know, that age, really, there is no age limitation to taking a test like this. You can be studying at any age, and the average age really is 27. We have 186 nationalities, so a lot of different people from all around the world, many different first languages, and Indian is our actual leading nationality, but 14% speak Mandarin, and that is definitely growing. And people, again, use their test scores for various different reasons, like we said, students, migrants, and professionals. A little bit of information about the test format. PT Academic has 3 parts and is completed in 1 session. Firstly, we start off with speaking and writing. And there are a number of different questions as part of the speaking and writing section. And again, this is completed in front of a computer and to a computer. So you have tasks like read aloud or repeat a sentence where you have to follow instruction and do exactly as you need to. And then questions like describe, image, and retell lecture, where you have to listen or formulate a response. We have a summarise written text and essay, which are pretty traditional, where you have to write an essay similar to IELTS in a way, or read something and summarise it. That's then followed by the reading section, which has multiple choice tasks, which are similar to other tests, and fill in the blank tasks. Some of them may be, multiple choice, multiple answer, or single answer. And then we have a reorder paragraph task, which is very similar to what I think a lot of teachers do in class with reading texts and putting texts back together. And lastly, we have a listening section, which has a whole variety of tasks. Summarize spoken text, where you listen and summarize a text, kind of similar to the writing one, but in a different way. Fill in the blanks, selecting missing words, and also write from dictation, where you listen and write. So a few little points. The test overall is about 3 hours, and there are 20 different item types altogether. The authentic content, so this means all of the audio and all of the texts that we use within the test are authentic. They're not created specifically for the test, but they are sourced. They are real world texts or audio that live in the world, and we find them and use them for the test. Test takers will encounter a whole variety of different accents, and that could be native or non-native speakers of English. And with the authentic content, I just want to highlight that it is academic content. So something that will be similar to what a person would see in a university setting. The scoring is integrated. That means that we can score 2 skills at one time. So questions like summarize written text, they require you to read, absorb the text, and then write. So we can essentially score you on both of those skills at one time. Similarly, with summarized spoken text, you're listening and you're writing. So we do test multiple skills. Lastly, and the point that we're really here to talk about today, is PTE Academic uses AI and automated scoring to provide accurate and objective results. So I'll go into that very shortly. Okay, so thinking about AI scoring, I want you to think about as you're listening, what your thoughts are about AI and technology and assessment. If you can think of a word or something to highlight your thoughts about it, feel free to pop this into the chat. Do you trust AI scoring? Or do you trust technology in teaching and assessments? So feel free to use the chat. I'd like to see some of your opinions come through. Okay, so let's start by talking about the changing landscape of assessments. Have you experienced something like this? Have you been the student in something like this, or have you been the teacher or invigilator? Many students testing at one time all together. It could be 5, 10, it could be 50, it could be 100 students all testing at one time, and a teacher or an invigilator who walks around or stands at the front of the class and monitors for cheating or is there to assist or help in any way. When the test is over, the teacher collects all the papers and then one by one marks them, or marks them with other teachers. This is generally the norm for testing, or what we've seen in classroom testing or high stakes testing. This is how it's usually been. I know personally from the marking aspect, going through paper by paper by paper is a pretty lengthy task and sometimes a little bit tedious. So we have seen changes to the way that this is done, the way that testing is delivered, and then the way assessments are scored or are marked. So we've seen, we've seen learners, due to technology, using computers more often in class or even outside of class to learn. We see now that assessments can be delivered on a computer, whether this be a placement exam or a midterm exam or an end of study exam. You can do this on a computer these days, whether it be at home with for high stakes assessment, you might be online proctored exams, or whether it be in a test centre like PTR Academic. Even these days, I've actually seen we have phone-based tests as well, which is a very interesting concept. So really, a lot of people have a phone and can take assessments on a phone. So not only has the way that we deliver the assessments changed, but the way that we evaluate and assess responses. The use of automated technology and AI has really come into this, and we see it not only with PTR Academic, but also with tests like TOEFL, and even Cambridge's LinguaSkill uses automated scoring. So there are a few reasons why we've shifted from traditional human scoring to AI, and this image kind of describes the reason why. So you can see in front of you, you've got a speaking interview for a test when you have the interviewer and the student. And the interviewer asks the question and the student provides the response. The interviewer would look at their marking rubric and think, oh, yeah, that's a pretty average response, and give them a mark. But you could have the same experience with a second interviewer and a second student. And if the student gives the exact same response, the interviewer might look at their rubric and go, yeah, actually, that's a pretty great response, and sometimes can score them a little bit higher. So despite training, people can have different points of view and different interpretations of marking rubrics. That's just the way it is. There can be transfer of judgment, sometimes from unconscious bias. Sometimes these things creep up. Or when a teacher or a person is listening to a response, they may think, oh, that pronunciation was really great, and automatically transfer that thought onto the content of what the person is delivering. As humans, we don't always have the ability to isolate different parts of a response. And I know for speaking, sometimes we record a response and think, oh, we can listen back to that. But sometimes we don't. And I personally have had the experience as a teacher of doing interview style assessments with learners, and I have another teacher there who's there to kind of give me a second opinion, and sometimes that could be good, and sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating if you disagree, or if you don't know how to disagree with the teacher. So there are a few different factors that make human assessing a little bit tricky. But overall, there needs to be a consistent application of marking rubrics in order for a test to be fair. And as a test provider, as an institution that accepts scores, and as the learner, you want to be 100% sure that test number 1 gets marked in the same way as test 100. Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry guys, I'm just making sure I click on the right screen. And apologies if you can hear any background noise. It's really windy outside today and I can hear the wind, but hopefully you can't hear that. Anyway, so going on to machine scoring, this is an example of what machine scoring looks like. The same 2 students, the same 2 answers, and the same marking. The computer-based marking will look at all factors of the response, the pronunciation, the fluency, the content, the writing skills, and the same response would get the same score. So through the use of this technology, we can provide results that mimic how human raters would score a response. And we can replicate this time and time again to provide consistent scoring. And there is no need for a learner or a test taker to do anything differently when they are responding to a computer-based test than it is to respond to a human who is marking. So the question is really, how do we get to this point of creating computer-based scoring or AI automated scoring? So this is how it all begins. The process to get to this point of automated scoring or AI scoring does take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of patience. So here you can see the development of a speaking item or a question. The item is created by item writers. So you start here, the item writers, they create the task, and then they provide this to a large group of test takers to gain a lot of responses. So you want to get responses from a really diverse range of test takers from all different parts of the world. These spoken responses are then provided to people who look at them, so they transcribe them. They do this in order to get the content away from the actual response. So they want to separate the content and the audio, essentially. So once the transcribing is finished, it's then provided to a group of human raters. So they go through the process of using a rubric to provide a score. Once a scoring consensus has been received, the information is fed into our automated scoring technology system, essentially. So we're feeding this into our system and training the scoring to think like a human. So after this process has been completed, we provide the questions to new test takers to validate. So we want to check that once the question is out there in the real world and someone responds to it, we want to see that their response, the human marking and the AI scoring match. So you want to make sure that your automated scoring has been trained correctly and trained properly to be sure that it's doing the right thing. And from PT Academic scores, there is a very high correlation between the expert ratings and then the machine scoring. And once you're very certain of this, the item can essentially go back into the world and go into the real test. And people can take the test and complete these items or these questions. This process can actually take about, up to 2 years. So it does, like I said, it does take a lot of time and effort to get new questions into the PT Academic tests. So it's quite rigorous. There are also a few other bits of technology that are used to make this work. So I have a video here from Dr. Ali Van Moor, who is the expert, and he talks about state-of-the-art technology, speech recognition technology that PT Academic uses. So I'm going to play this video for you. So just bear with me.
How does the technology work? How do you use it to do automated grading?
When a test taker responds to an item, their response is captured as a sound file, and it's sent to our servers centrally, where it is processed by our speech processors. And we extract lots of information from a very small response. Every utterance is analyzed to an incredible amount of detail. And we analyze it for two main pieces of information: for what it was that the test taker said, the content of their speech, and also for how they said it, the manner of their speech. So if we look at the content of the speech, we want to know, did they respond correctly to the question? Did they hit all of the main points, or did they say all of the expected words in the response? Did they say them in a grammatically correct sequence? Did they select the right lexical items and use them appropriately? And so the actual words that the test taker says feed into two kinds of subscores, which is their vocabulary and their sentence mastery. The second kind of detail, which we analyze the response for, is the manner of speech. And this is the test taker's pronunciation and the fluency. And the speech recognizers will take an utterance and evaluate it for things like how long it took the test taker to say it, what was their rate of speech, how often did they pause, and crucially, where did they pause? Did they pause in the same place that high proficient speakers pause or native speakers pause? Did they put their lexical stress on the right words? Did they put the lexical stress in the right phrases within the context of the entire word? Was their intonation correct? And did they articulate and enunciate each word comprehensively with the correct intelligibility that a native listener could understand them? And so what you have is a system that takes a microscope to everything that was said, chops up each second of speech into hundredths, and extracts very detailed information. And this all feeds into our scoring models. So when a test taker, for example, performs on a sentence repeat, the information that we get from that sentence, we probably extract about 40 different pieces of information from a single sentence. Now, over the course of an entire test, about 2,000 pieces of information would feed into the final score that the test taker gets. And so that's a very, very sophisticated and very reliable method of scoring.
Great. So it's funny for us as teachers, when we do speaking tests with our students, we only think about what we hear in our ears, but when you think about taking something that you've heard and, transcribing it, that's one thing. But when you think about taking a sound file and seeing the waves, the way that a sound file looks, the way that, people go up and down and put gaps between their words, this is the type of sophistication that AI scoring and that technology can really bring to the process of assessing speaking. Oh, let's see if I can go on. No, I might have to click here. Okay, so the development of a writing item is pretty similar to that of a speaking item. The item itself is created, so the question is written. It's provided to a bunch of students all around the world, or learners, to complete. It is scored by our expert raters, and then we train our system to predict the ratings that human raters would give. Then you have to validate to make sure that the system is working correctly. So the same process, give the item to a group of students or learners, give the responses to human scorers to assess, and give the response to the machine scoring, and see if those two match up. If there is a high correlation and they do match up, then great. And that item can then be given to real test takers. If those two don't match up, then you have to go back and go, well, maybe that item is not great, or maybe there is some issue here, and let's see what the problem is. During a PTR Academic test, all of our items, all of our responses go to the automated scoring process. If during the process there is a problem, or if there's we have fail safes essentially that will flag responses that the machine scoring cannot complete, and these always go back to our human scorers. So we always need to check, why is the machine not scoring this? What's the issue? Is it maybe not in English? Or is it maybe it's a new response that the machine has never seen? Majority of the time, the response has an issue because maybe it's not in English. But, these things don't just run freely. There are always human interventions at all times throughout the process, from beginning to the continuation of students completing this item in the real test. Again, writing, there are a few different technologies that are used in order to complete scoring of writing. So one of the technologies that PTR Academic uses is called the Intelligent Essay Assessor. So we call it IEA, and it uses technology called latent semantic analysis. So I am not the expert on this, but I have a video from Karen Lockenbaum who helped design and implement this technology. So I'm going to play that one for you now.
How are your machines trained?
Well, first, we train the engine on lots of English text so they can understand what words mean and how they relate to each other. Then for a given item on a test, we collect 200 to 500 candidate responses, and we have them scored by human scorers. IEA then analyzes the responses and compares them to each other and computes a variety of different measures on them. And from that, it figures out what features the humans are using when they score an item. And we train the engine to score using those features in the same way that the humans do.
So the technology is acting like a human. What would I do to assess that writing? That's what we need to train the technology to do.
How are your...
Oops, let's get past that one. So what are the benefits of using AI and automated scoring? Well, overall, the benefits of using this technology are kind of similar to why we use technology in our everyday lives. It makes things a lot easier. The technology is quicker, whereas it may take a teacher hours to complete the assessment or the scoring of, say, 20 papers. The technology can do it in minutes. The technology is able to do routine tasks without getting bored or distracted. It makes fewer mistakes because it doesn't get bored or distracted. And it makes a complex task, like analysing a scoring rubric, into a much easier task. So it is there to help us. It doesn't mean that we stop using humans for any processes or any scoring or marking. Humans are integral to, like I said earlier, creating the test, being the first examiner or the marker of responses. Teachers are really important in terms of educating learners or providing feedback. This technology just sits alongside teachers. So that was just a little snippet, a little bit of information about automated scoring for speaking and writing. There is a lot more to be learned, and there are some really, really great videos and information out there. You can go to our Pearson PT Academic website. So we have a little section on research. There are a whole bunch of different research papers looking at many, many different elements of PT Academic. And you've also got a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel, the videos by Dr. Ali Van Moor and by Karen Lockenbaum that look at many different aspects of automated scoring. How does the technology treat accents? What happens if I and ah? What different qualities does the technology score in writing? How can technology understand writing? All of those types of videos are there for you if you're really interested in this topic, and I personally find it very interesting. Okay, moving on to evaluating performances in the classroom. So what does this mean for you as a teacher? If you deliver PT Academic preparation or want to start delivering PT Academic preparation, what can you do in the classroom? So the first thing I would say to somebody who wants to be delivering PT Academic preparation, if you're teaching towards the test, as a teacher, it's really important for you to know more about the scoring, or the scoring that the learner receives. So once a person has taken PT Academic, they receive their scores in about 24 to 48 hours. In some cases, a test taker will complete their test in the morning and they may receive their scores that same evening or the very next day. So our score turnaround is really fast thanks to the AI scoring technology. Once they receive their scores, they actually do this, they access them digitally. So they'll receive an email and they'll head to their MyPTE account and they'll see this on their screen. They can actually download a PDF that they can then provide to other people. And they can talk to their teacher about it. And what they see, firstly, is a photo of the test taker, which is taken on test day. And they'll see their overall score. So this student has scored 80 overall. So PT Academic is scored on a granular scale. So that means you can have scores at every point throughout the scale. And it starts at 10 and it goes to 90. So 10 being the lowest and 90 being the highest. And this is measured on the global scale of English. So the global scale of English and the granular scoring really allows for a more precise measurement of ability. So when you, for example, use band scores and someone might get a band 5, you're not always sure whether the person is at the bottom end of the 5 or the higher end of the 5. So a granular scoring scale kind of allows you to see more of this information. So as I mentioned, there's an overall score. So this person got 80, which is a really, really high score. Then you see the 4 communicative skills. So the communication skills is listed there: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So the overall score and the 4 communicative skills scores, these are usually what a university or a government will set. So you might be entering a university in Australia and you need to get a 60 in PT Academic, and you need to get a 60 overall and a 60 in all 4 skills. Or some courses might require some different levels. You might be doing law, for example, and you need to get, let's say, 65 or 70, but you need to make sure that you've got a higher writing score. So when talking to learners about PT Academic and their scores, the first thing that you really need to advise students is about checking what scores they need. So there's no point in taking a test if you're not sure about the scores that you're trying to achieve. So go to that university website, find out the scores, and you know what your goal is. There are a few other additional details on the score report, and one of them is the enabling skills. And these are really more related to writing and speaking. So some of the skills like grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, spelling, written discourse, which kind of includes a range of different writing skill areas. And these show areas of strength and weakness. And they're there to inform the learner or inform the teacher of what areas can you work on? Well, what areas are you quite good at? They're really only there for the learner because they're only tested. These areas are only tested in a few questions here and there. So they're not as accurate as the 4 skill areas. Lastly, you have a little bit of information on the test centre. So where did the learner take the test? And who is this learner? Where are they from? What's their date of birth? Just general administrative information. little bit early. So any person who is taking a test, one thing that I would recommend to them, and I would recommend it highly to teachers as well, is you need to know some information about how each item, so each of the 20 PT Academic items, how are they scored? So we have a score guide that's available for teachers and for learners. And it goes through each item within PT Academic, and there is a marking rubric or a scoring rubric that they can go through to see what kinds of areas does this item get tested, or what am I tested on in this item? What should I be looking out for? What should I be thinking about? This information, some people don't even look at it, and I think, oh, you've kind of missed an opportunity here. So I would recommend that teachers especially highlight this with learners. Go through each of those little rubrics and understand what it means. I've just taken one as an example here. It's summarized spoken text. So again, it's a task where you listen to audio and you write a summary. And the task is marked on a few different traits in a few different areas: content, form. So what should the response look like in the number of words? You know, if you're going to look at this is a really easy area to make sure someone meets, because it's number of words, grammar, vocabulary, spelling. Sorry, just a moment. Okay. Then we can think about how items are scored. So for PT Academic, items are actually scored in 3 specific areas. We've got correctness, some formal aspects, and the quality of the response. For item scoring, we do award partial credit for some items. So for some, you may have a potential of 20 areas that you can receive a score for. If you didn't do well in all of them, you might not get the full amount, but you can get some. We also don't go into any negative scoring. So we don't take any scores away from people. If there's for example, a multiple choice question, and you can receive possibly 2 to 3 correct responses. If you only get 1, then you get 1 point. If you get none of them correct, then you just move on. There is no negative scoring. So if you think about these 3 areas that you're scored on, correctness, that means, is the item right or wrong? You can only be one or the other, right or wrong. And these are for a lot of your multiple choice questions or your fill in the blanks. You can only have a right or wrong answer. Then we have formal aspects, things like word counts. Like in an essay, you should only try to write 300 words. If you go over 300, then you're not going to receive the scores for that area. If you're under a certain amount, if you're under 150, then again, same thing. You won't receive any scoring for that. And lastly, the quality of the response. And this really includes a number of different things. Because in the quality, we're thinking about the content of the writing, the quality of the pronunciation, the quality of the fluency, the vocabulary that the person chose to use. So that's a really important part of assessing a response. The scores or scoring is not really a simple matter of one item, 1 mark, and adding up all the items and trying to average things out. I know a lot of people try to do that. They try to think, oh, well, I can calculate everything and then find myself a score. It's really not that simple, especially with technology. Each item is assessed in an individual way and with varying degrees of difficulty for each item. So each item on a test really provides a rich combination of scores that feed into those communicative scores and feed into the overall score. Oh, can't click. Where did my clicking go? There we go. Let's have a look at one example here. So this is retell lecture. You have the instructions at the top. So it says you will hear a lecture. After listening to the lecture, in 10 seconds, please speak into the microphone and retell what you have heard from the lecture in your own words. You have 40 seconds to give your response. Okay, so that's one question type in PTE. So this one question type retell lecture is an integrated scoring item. So it's scored for listening, but also for speaking. When we think about the scoring, the first thing that it's scored on is the content. So what the person said, the content of what the person said. So if the content is fully off the mark, totally off topic, or it's in a different language, then there will be no further scoring of the item. So if no content, there is 0 and no further scoring. So once the content is scored, the next two features are oral fluency and pronunciation of the speech. So those two little areas feed into our enabling skill scores. But if we add the content, the oral fluency and the pronunciation together, the total item scores lead into the communicative skill scores for the areas of speaking and listening. And then that feeds into the overall score of the test taker for all items completed within the tests. So hopefully that's not too confusing. Hopefully I've simplified that a little bit. But like I said, access the score report. It's on our website. It's free, and you can have a look at each of them and see how they work. I'm just going to get a little sip of water. Okay, so how can you start to evaluate responses in class? Here are 3 tips that I can suggest. Firstly, it's really important as a teacher to know the traits tested in each item. So what kind of traits are we looking for? Like I mentioned in that score guide. So if we look at an example for a repeat sentence, so this is one of the speaking tasks. So for a repeat sentence, a test taker has to listen to an audio, so a sentence, and then repeat it out loud. So this item is scored on content, pronunciation, and fluency, similar to the last one. Use the scoring rubric to evaluate each skill separately. So like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about creating a speaking item, you need to isolate these areas. You can't think of it all at the one time. I mean, you can try, but it is better to listen to something maybe 3 times and think about each of those areas individually, which means, number 3, you may need to evaluate a response a number of times. Yep. It may sound like it will take longer, and maybe it will, but it is better for overall assessment of an item. So if we look at just one of those areas, content, this is part of the scoring rubric for the content area of repeat sentence. So we use a scale from 0 to 3. So number 3 is all words in the response from the prompt in the correct sequence. So that's the content. All words repeated in the correct sequence. Or 2, 50% of the words in the response in the correct sequence, and 1, less than 50% in the correct sequence. And if, at a 0, almost nothing in the response in the correct sequence. So it's very simple scale, really. So I thought we could try one together. So if you're at home and you're watching this, I want you to try it. I'm going to play the audio, and I'm going to play it just once, and I want to see if you can repeat it yourself. So let's give it a go. I hope you're ready.
There'll be a conference here next summer on using the web for academic research.
Hopefully you got that. I feel like with a question like this, the first time you hear it, it may be a bit of a surprise. That's why we actively work with students to get them used to the process. So just to be nice, I'm going to play it one more time, just in case you missed it.
There'll be a conference here next summer on using the web for academic research.
So here is that sentence. There will be a conference here next summer on using the web for academic research. So part of what we do as teachers is we try and teach our learners to repeat that sentence and to put the pauses, the intonation and stresses in the correct places. So let's think about evaluating these responses in the area of content. Okay, we're thinking just about content. These are two test taker responses. So I'm going to play response 1, and I want you to think about the marking rubric, and would you give it a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0? So let's listen to the first one.
There will be a conference here next summer on using the web for academic research.
So if I think about it and I look at the sentence and I listen to the test taker's response, this response had all the correct words in the correct sequence. There were no extra words. There were no omitted words. All the words were there. We're not thinking about the spacing or the fluency. We're just thinking about the words used. So I would give that learner a 3. Let's have a look at response 2.
There will be a conference about the use of the web search.
So you can automatically tell that, there are some words missing, there are some different words, and just listening to it, it's hard to compare the responses. So what I would suggest is listen and transcribe, because it is the best way to compare the content. So listen and transcribe. That way you can see, oh, this word was missing, or that word was missing, or that word was an extra word. And in this case, I would award this student a 1, as less than 50% of the words from the prompt were there or in the correct sequence. Once you've done that, you can next evaluate the pronunciation and then evaluate the fluency. And we do have scoring rubrics for both of these as well. How are we doing for time? Okay, good, 15 minutes. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, refer back to the skills tested in each item. And this is really, really important, not only for evaluating, but really it's important for the teaching of the item types, or teaching how to approach the item types. So you're going to use this in multiple different ways. I've got an example here of a describe image item type. So if you have a look, there's a graph. There could be an image showing change. There could be a bar chart or a pie chart. Many different images are used. In this one, it's a bar chart. And so test takers have to look at the graph, and then in 25 seconds, speak into the microphone and describe in detail what the graph is showing. And they have 40 seconds to provide the response. So it's important to think about, what do people need to do? We have this information available in many different places for learners and for teachers, especially in our resource. Actually, I'm just going to show, I wasn't planning on doing this, but we do have this book here, actually, the official guide to PT Academic, which has this information for everyone. Let me put that away. So what do learners need to do? They need to speak for a purpose. They need to know what the purpose of them speaking is. Is it to repeat? No. In repeat sentence, you repeat. In describe image, you want to inform and you want to explain. You want to support your opinions with details. You want to organize what you say in a logical way. Give a general overview and then look at more detail. Develop their ideas. Use appropriate words and phrases appropriate to the context. So think about the words and phrases we use to show change. What has increased? What has decreased? Those kinds of things. Natural rate of speech, fluent speech, correct intonation, stress, and pronunciation. Is what's being said, is it intelligible? Can I understand it? So there are a lot of different things that we're assessing, a lot of different skills that you need to complete a task like this. So knowing those skills and using those skills to evaluate performance is important. I think it's really important to also get learners to reflect on their own performance. So if you're in class and you're doing a task like describe image, learners can record themselves. You can use audio recorders on your phone these days, so that's really helpful. So get them to record themselves and then to reflect and evaluate their own responses. So the learner can think, did I use an introductory phrase? Did I start general? Did I describe the most significant, important information? Did I emphasize important points? Did I use figures? When you look at a graph, you see lots of figures and measurements. And did I give an implication or a conclusion? So think about that structure when you end your speech and you give a conclusion, what's going to happen or what could happen. So this little chart, rubric here, little feedback chart that we've got actually comes from one of the resources that we have for PT Academic called Expert PT Academic. This resource is actually a really, really great one for teachers. If you're doing a traditional class and you're doing, say, a 10-week course or 12-week course, this is the book for you as a teacher, Expert PT Academic. It's also really important to get some feedback or to learn in different ways, essentially. In order to evaluate a response, you can analyze samples. So learners know what a good response or a poor response looks like or sounds like. Learners can go through responses together. Working with a partner is always great. You can highlight strengths and weaknesses to help each other. And like I said, get test takers to evaluate each other. Sometimes that can be a bit difficult in class, I know, because sometimes some learners are a little bit nicer than others. You might not want to be too critical, and others might be a little bit overly critical, but it's good to find the balance, and it's a good starting point. And teachers can work with small groups or pairs of learners to hear what they say and to offer their advice as well. You can also put together your own little feedback charts or tables. This is one that I created myself. If we're thinking about specifically pronunciation and fluency. So this is one that could be used in many, many different contexts. You can use it with any of the speaking items, and it has just some simple questions. So did the response demonstrate smooth, effortless, and natural rate of speech? And if it's a learner who's doing it, you've got a simple yes, sometimes no structure there. So they're not giving scores, they're just thinking yes or no, or sometimes. Were the speech sounds similar to that of most regular speakers of the language? Okay, so that's thinking about pronunciation. Were there any words that were difficult to understand? Or you could use the phrase, what are some words that the learner should improve or could improve? And overall, what can they do to improve? Any additional comments? And getting students to work in pairs and think of these things will hopefully also help their own performance as well as helping the person they're working with. Or you could do this as a teacher and student together. Okay, so I thought I would put just a little audio clip here from Describe Image. So similar to the image we saw before. And if we think about this audio, but we think about it only in the area of fluency. Okay, if we think about fluency, did the response demonstrate a smooth, effortless, and natural rate of speech? Okay, so we think about that one concept or that one question as we listen to the audio. So let's give it a go. I want you to listen and think about that question.
The bar graph depicted the information about the venue by year. It can be seen that in 2001 it was a very at least, but reached the peak at the last of 2006. In the 2000 it was near about 900 millions, and in 2001 it was only up to 10 millions. It was gradually rising there was gradually rise in the revenue by year, and
Hopefully you could hear that. I feel like that one was a little bit low. I'm going to see if I can get the volume up a little bit on that one. Just give me one moment. Nope. Let's try this time. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me. Okay. I'm going to play that one just a little bit of that one again. And again, thinking about, did the response demonstrate a smooth, effortless, and natural rate of speech?
the bar graph depicted the information about the revenue by year. It can be seen that in 2001 it was a very at least, but reached the peak at the last of 2006. In the 2000.
Okay, I'll stop it there because I think you can get a sense of the way the person spoke. In terms of smooth, effortless, and natural rate of speech, is it a yes? Is it a sometimes? Is it a no? So think about that. The person spoke very quickly. It was as if they were saying one single sentence without any pauses, without any full stops. So in my opinion, I would say no to sometimes. They need to maybe slow down their speech. It didn't sound effortless. It sounded like they were just pushing on, really. So these are the things that you need to think about when you're evaluating a response. One other thing that we have that is really useful for teachers in class is we have scored practice tests for PTR Academic. And these are mock tests that you can do, our students can do at home or in the classroom as well. You can set them at different times, maybe at the beginning of a course or at the end of a course. It gives them the real experience of PTR Academic and what it's like on test day, because it's timed, it's structured in the exact same way as the test. And the best thing about it is students receive a mock score report. So as a teacher, you can have them show you their mock score report, and you can get an idea again of some of their strengths and weaknesses and where they could potentially work on, areas that they could potentially work on, and areas that you could work on in class as well. Okay, so this has just really been a little bit of a snapshot, and if you're looking for more professional development, if you've got time on your hands and you want to broaden some of your areas of knowledge, if you do test prep for other tests and you're thinking it's time to get into PTR Academic prep, we do have things for you. So if you were here at the very beginning of the session, you saw the video about our online teacher training course. So this is a great one. It is a free online training course that covers all aspects of PTR Academic, and Module 1 and Module 6 actually focus on scoring and automated scoring, and especially assessing, speaking and writing. So like I mentioned, 6 modules. They take about an hour to 2 hours, depending on your pace. But, if you're doing this at home, it's really up to you how long you want to spend on it. You can register for each module individually. Take 1, take 2, take them all. It's up to you. There is a certificate of completion for each module, and you do have the opportunity to interact with other teachers. So there are points where we ask people to provide comments or ideas or share some of their activity ideas. And that's one great thing. There are little takeaway teacher toolkits that provide you with some ideas for classroom activities, which is really, really great. So my final thoughts. Oh, I can see the sun's coming. Well, if you've watched this session, and I hope you've taken something away from it, I hope you've got some ideas. My final thoughts are it's really important to use that score guide and to understand how items are scored within the test. So as a teacher, you need this knowledge, and you can share this with your learners and help them interpret the score guide. It's really important to refer back to the skills tested in each item. You need to know what you're trying to achieve or what you're trying to do, and what skills you need to build or develop, note-taking skills, skills on how to structure items. And it's important to use self and peer evaluation tools in class. One thing I didn't write there, but I probably should have, is remember to score each item or each area within an item in isolation. Okay, so that's probably one I should have added in there actually. And if this has been really interesting to you, I would really encourage you to follow us on our social media. We have Facebook, so we're at PTE. We also have an Instagram, so check us out on Instagram. Facebook and Instagram are really a little bit more test taker focused. But as a teacher, it's kind of good to see that kind of information and share that as well. LinkedIn is really great for teachers. We occasionally will put things up there about sessions that are upcoming. And the best thing to do, the thing that I think, you can definitely get on, is to join our community of teachers. So we have a growing community of teachers. We do try to host regular events. And if you sign up for our newsletters, you will get information and you'll be invited to our events as well. So please do join us. Thank you so much for watching and attending. I hope you've learned something new and it's kind of sparked a little bit of interest for you, and you can find out a lot more. And I'm ready to answer some questions. So hopefully you've submitted some questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Right. Thank you very much, Daria, for a
okay.
fruitful session. I really enjoyed it, right? Although I too believe that machines would never replace teachers, and it has no soul, but I agree that AI has a new role in education, especially in simplifying the process of grading the bulk quantity of assignments.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea that students can use it for a mock test, and they can also do a self-reflection of their productive skills. That's rather interesting. Yeah, right. Without any delay, we shall now continue with the Q&A session. Okay. So Daria, I have chosen around 3 questions for you. Ready?
Great. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. The first question is from Lacey. It states that it's quite a lengthy one. Sure. As a teacher trainer, I am all for AI testing. However, from my experience, speaking tests may pose a problem for Malaysian students because many speaking tests seem to detect British and American accents better. This resulted in many of my fluent English-speaking students to score poorly in these tests. So how far can the AI machine detect other varieties of English accents as well?
Yeah,
that's a question.
That's a good question. I personally don't believe that our automated scoring technology for speaking can only detect British or American accents. That's because we have a variety of test takers from all around the world, speaking with a whole different variety of accents. And we don't really encourage people to change the way they speak. That's not something that I would say that teachers would tell their learners, right? You don't say to your learner, well, you should speak like this. No, you want to speak in the natural way that you speak. And so I believe strongly that our speech technology can detect a range of different accents. We have test takers from China, we have test takers from India, we have test takers from Africa, and they each speak in a different way. I think the main thing is, not changing the way that you speak for computer or automated scoring or AI scoring technology, but to think about, is my speech intelligible? Like, if I was to speak to you, could you understand what I say? Do I have the correct pauses? Some people, like that sample, they try and speak really quickly because they think they need to get everything into the area. Sometimes when people say, like when we see a question and it says you have 40 seconds to speak, people may think, I have to put everything into those 40 seconds.
Yeah, because you sort of like panic is during the test, isn't it?
But you don't have to use all that 40 seconds. You don't have to put everything into the response. Be a little bit selective. Pace yourself. It's really natural for people to take a high stakes test, like PTE, like IELTS, and get nervous, and you tend to you're not always acting in the way that you normally act. I know that some of the concepts that's been really important to people is getting that feeling of calm before you take your test, to try and not let the energy and the nervousness overtake you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the great answer.
Right.
Right, shall move on to the second question, which comes from Adrian. Okay, he states, okay, the question states, in my experience, pronunciation is very often scored differently, even by human markers. Okay, so I wonder if AI is actually fairer in comparison to human.
You know, it's funny because if you've lived in a country outside of your own, and when you first get to a place and you listen to people, and it can be like a bit of a surprise, but then your ear gets used to it. You know, you get to understand that accent a little bit more, and you can kind of hear it and interpret it a little bit easier. But then if another person were to come in and meet someone from a different country and they didn't have that training, it might be difficult for them to understand. And then there could be two different interpretations. That's very natural, I think. I don't think we need to do it as humans, but it does happen. And if you have to train your ear to understand an accent, then I think it would affect. And I think that's why automated scoring does make it easier. And being completely honest, I can meet other native English speakers and have that same experience. I can meet someone from Scotland and go, what are they saying? But yeah, I think that hits a point really of the fairness of technology in hearing a bunch of accents and giving them, having the ability to interpret them all.
Yeah, I believe like what you say, although the machine is there, but the human is still playing a role in making sure that it actually detects the right things and whether it's familiar with the type of context that's been sent to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
okay.
And I think saying, you know, you have the computer there to interpret something, but computers, like everyone, they're not foolproof. If the computer doesn't understand something, it flags it and says, hey, I don't understand this. Human, can you make me understand it?
Yeah. So the soul comes from the human, yeah?
Yes.
Not the machine, yeah? Okay, the third and final question again is from Adrian. Okay, our very active participant. Right, with AI scoring being so detailed, how can you make sure that test takers aren't unduly penalized for things that wouldn't necessarily matter to a human ear in a human conversation?
I'm trying to think of the types of things that wouldn't matter in a human conversation, but would matter in computer technology. Let me think about this. You know, I think sometimes, maybe things like more ums and ahs and spaces between words may be more important to a human, to a computer scoring technology than it would be to a human. And really, if you think about tests, each test has its positive and each test has its limitation. So no test is 100%, I think, in any way. And I think when you think about tests like PTR Academic or IELTS or TOEFL, you know, they each have their pros and cons. When we create a test like PTR Academic and speaking questions, they have to fit into a certain structure to fit the automated scoring. So yeah, sometimes it's, I think, important to be mindful of those little things. And if you are talking to a learner and they are preparing for PTR Academic, you may have to say to them, you know, think about those ums and ahs, because a human might forgive them a little bit easier, but automated scoring may not forgive them as easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Lots of sense. Right. By the way, is the PTE academic test adaptive?
No, not yet. I don't know if it will be in the future, but it isn't. Yeah, I know a lot of other tests that are adaptive tests, but hopefully one day it'll make, I guess an adaptive test will make maybe the test move a little bit faster for learners as well. So yeah, who knows in the future? It could happen.
Right, Daria. Am I getting your name right actually? Daria? Is that how you pronounce it?
Perfect. Daria, yeah.
Such a really, yeah, we have come to the end of the Q&A session. Will you like to wrap up, say a last line or last words before saying goodbye to the audience?
Yeah, thank you again for watching the session. We really appreciate your time. And if there is anything that you want to know more about, you can get in touch with our teams. We have a local team member in Malaysia who is wonderful. You know, if you pass on your questions or if you get in touch with the Melter team, I'm sure they'll pass on that information to us. So yeah, keep learning about PTE and all the different things in the ELT world. Enjoy your time at Melter.
Surely will. Okay, I believe the audience have really benefited much from your sharing, especially teachers, which I believe they will not forget to try out the free online courses that you shared just now. Okay, I'm eager to try it too. Okay, and thank you, Daria, for answering all the questions, and a huge thank you for joining and sharing with us today. We do hope to see you again for more sharing sessions in future, and hopefully in person one day real soon, yeah?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you very much for spending and sparing your time with us today. Nice knowing you. Bye. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after this, can I have the next slides, please? Rooms 1, yeah? After this, we will have rooms 1 to 5 will be open for you, okay? As you can see on the slides, okay? A total of 10 presentations will be lined up for you in 2 slots, okay? So this will be the first slot at 11:20 to 11:50 a.m. There are 5 rooms there. And the second slot is at, next slide, please. These are the first 5. This will be the second 5, okay? Which will start at 12 to 12:30. Please select a presentation that you are most interested to attend, okay? And please do engage by posing questions for the presenters in the chat box, okay? Please post as many questions as you want, okay? We really like that, okay? Don't worry if you miss any of the presentations, as all the videos will be accessible after the track ends. Okay. Next, to a few reminders. Okay, we would like to remind you, please take note that any announcement will be done through the chat box. Please stay updated by checking the chat box from time to time. You can type your comments, questions, and suggestions in the chat box. The presenters will respond to you here. E-certificates will be emailed to all participants, presenters, winners, and delegates within 14 days. If you do not receive your e-certificate by then, please email to maltaconference2021@gmail.com. Please be reminded that there will be a feedback via a link or a QR code for you to fill. Okay, now stay tuned and be with us till the end for a fruitful and enjoyable conference. Okay, our track 3 will end at 12:30 and it will start at 11:20, like I mentioned just now. Okay, so see y'all then. Bye. Enjoy the other sessions. Bye.